Okay, so it's 5:02. I'll call this meeting in order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Want to lead us into it?
So why?
I think it'll be
It'll
on the
come up
screen.
in-
There it is. Richmond.
Put your right hand over your heart, ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Do we have any public comments? No public comments. Okay, we'll move on to the policy review.
Okay, so, first of all, thank you everyone for being here this afternoon. The first one is the mobile communication devices. We brought it back because it had gone for a first read. And in talking to Dr. De Jesus, just before we started, what we're going to add to this and then put it back for first review. It is, which school has which policy, because each one has a different one. And we are going to add that students get their devices back at the end of the day. We want to be sure that that's in there so that we know that students will always get their phones back at the end of the day. Are there any other additions you would like or?
So there's a different policy for each campus. So, is our recommendation going to be that we maintain that model?
I thought we talked about that like a while ago, but we agreed to.
I'm old, I
Yeah,
can't.
I thought we agreed that each campus had their own set of rules based
Correct.
on that principles.
So that hasn't changed.
No,
So we wouldn't, for example, have metal or children driving cars to school.
Not yet.
Okay, but you hear what I'm saying, there's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with age, you would think. So what I would like to do is then, this will return for what's the equivalent of a first read.
Yes.
And so you would expect comments and I don't think the president's here tonight.
I don't believe so.
So what I would hope that when it comes time for this first read policy, maybe the staff comment could be that, you know, we brought this back to this committee and then open it up and someone will ask us how we're good, but I'm good, I'm great with that.
Okay.
Mrs. Erdrich, just
Yes.
a quick question. So for the policy first read, we'll differentiate, just for my clarity. High Desert, their policy, BHS, their policy, but for both campuses, students will be
Retreat, they get their phones
back
back.
at the end of the instruction. Got it, thank you.
So the first one that I brought up, and these are all recommendations from the CFBA, is behavioral intervention for special education students. Last time the district revised it, it was in 2005, so it's been 20 years. The big changes in that is that students who have a special education student, discipline still is, you know, it's for all students. But what needs to happen is you need to see if it's a manifestation of their disability. And do they have a behavior intervention plan? If they do, and there's still concerns, then there needs to be a meeting and decide, okay, how are we going to adjust the behavior intervention plan to be able to address the needs of the students so that we can support the student and hopefully diminish those behaviors. Let's see, it's a kind of. It also states specifically that for a functional behavior assessment, if the parents or guardians do not agree with the results of it, that they can request an independent evaluation. And that is at the cost of the district.
Is that if they don't agree on the manifestation, is that what we're talking about?
If you do an assessment and they don't agree with the assessment, then they can request the independent. And that's something that any student that has an IEP, if, for example, your child is being assessed for speech. And we say they don't qualify, and you really feel, no, my child is really struggling with articulation. I don't believe so. You can request that independent evaluation be made. Okay. And then also something new that's been added is emergency interventions. It specifically says that The superintendent or designee shall annually collect data on the number of times that seclusion, mechanical restraint, and physical restraint were used on students, and the number of students that were subjected to that. And that the data should be disaggregated based on race and ethnicity and gender. And reported for students with 504 plan, with an IEP, and all other students, so really for everyone, regardless if they're special education or not. And that report needs to be posted on the district website and submitted to the CDE no later than than 3 months after the end of the year. So those were the big changes on that.
And that's the old language.
That's what's being added, that's the new. Any questions?
Thank you for that, Mrs. Roderick. Just citing under the emergency interventions, the report shall be posted on district's website and submitted to CP no later than. Once adopted, we have these numbers in terms of seclusion, restraints and so forth. And so that's something that we could go ahead and devise and then upload onto the website.
Okay, then. The reason these groups exist is so you can give people, so we don't all just get up there and be quiet, and smile at each other and nod and wink, and then the one of us that's running for election can choose to be the one that says something that's going to get them more votes and put them out to be the constant change agent representing community. But I want to address a couple things here, and they're going to be controversial and they're going to feed some discussion. I try to do this with other board members don't suffer because of the statements. But I want to group a bunch of stuff together here, including you know what, let's talk about the disclosure of confidential information and privileged information. Can we get through that discussion, and then I'll make my comments on both.
So, it's bylaw 9011. Last time it was updated by the district was 2007. This is a new one from CSBA for June of this year. And it wants to be sure that board members are aware of the fact that information that is discussed in closed session, information that is not public, cannot be disclosed. So it gives you examples. So again, in closed session or information that may be acquired in anticipation of a closed session meeting, information contained in communication provided to board members from the district's attorney, and information deemed confidential by the board. It says, should that information be disclosed, what can the board do? So you can get an injunctive release to prevent disclosure. It can be referred to the grand jury, or you can censure or other disciplinary action be provided to the board member. So those are the specific changes that have happened to this bylaw. Any questions?
No. Okay, so if we're open to discussion now, so there's something that's called privilege. So for example, police officers, if they are acting within a certain known normal to their best belief code of conduct, a judge, a school board member, the superintendent, the board member, you are entitled to some level of immunity. But when you step outside of the boundaries of your privilege, say for example, in a completely imaginary world, I am somebody on staff and I hand you a stack of IEP documents. I have just broken federal law. I have just opened up whoever's names are on there, whoever the students are. Each one of them has an action against the district, and they all have action against the district. And those actions in civil court, sometimes civil court looks at a situation and says, listen, society cannot have this. So we're not talking about criminal stuff. That they'll have throw it out to the jury, and the jury is gonna say, this is so crazy that we're gonna make an example out of this person. And sometimes those costs come back to the district. And what ends up happening is, if you think that I'm gonna give out the kids money just so you can be popular as a board member or as a staff member, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna push for the lawyer to go after whoever it is as a person. And so this stuff is really serious when you start getting into like negotiations with staff. I really believe and I've got 5 years sitting out there before I'm going into my 10th year now. I have never seen a union, an association in this district go to impasse or file. But when I was out there, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't try to make myself a part of it. When I was campaigning, I was not part of it. And I have always seen, and this is gonna hit close to you, Alex, is I think that the teams that the district puts together and the associations put together have always come up with something that's fair. Now, our budget might not think it's fair, but I don't expect teachers to watch the price of milk go up every year and spend their own money and lose something else. So that's kind of how I look at it. But if I'm involving myself in the background, trying to figure out what the next angle is in the board updates, I am committing a crime. I'm undermining the bargaining policy. And sometimes what happens is, especially when you're a new board member, everybody's your friend in the community because you're going to change everything. And then when you don't deliver what they want you to, now all of a sudden you're the worst thing in the world. And they will say things like, oh, well, I talked to them about this and they told me this, and they say you got a Brown Act violation, you got lawyers beating on your door. So the special education stuff, if it's okay, we'll return to that now. And I want to talk about what it was like when I was a kid. There's an interesting book by Ruth Colker called Disabled Education, and she goes through every major Supreme Court case that's been related to special education since the 60s. She reveals in that book that when IDEA came around, it was a response to segregation. And the idea was that you could basically take people who had lower grades, behavioral challenges, and isolate them. So it was a manner of keeping up segregation. Oh, the proof is there. So at the same time, people were saying, well, I want my rights. I don't want to be bullied. I don't want to do all this. So I think the education model, for the most part, I'm speaking broadly, was kind of like, okay, if you're doing stuff in the classroom, I'm going to send you to the principal's office. And you will go to the principal's office, you will fall behind that day. And it was shame and humiliation. Okay. And so after so many visits to the principal's office and so many missed classes, you became the dumb kid in the class. And they say, you know, you're eligible for an IEP. And then after you get your IEP and you start acting up because now socially you are words like retarded, all this. This is what it was like when I grew up. So they put you in that room over there. And guess what? We're back to isolation. So that type of system creates a hierarchy in which the principal is the prison warden. And when they get tired of being the prison warden, then they have an assistant principal or a dean, and those positions were created to handle the discipline while the principal is the popular person up here dealing with the policy managers. And it failed, and it created people like me. So at the end of the day, the new thing we've got is what's it called? Social emotional learning. So I'll be the only one to say this, but in what world do parents or students come into a world in which their teacher becomes their parent, their psychologist, and all this, and we have to put a really nice Band-Aid on it Because the behaviors in the classrooms are so wild and egregious. But yeah, what are you supposed to do? So teachers and administrators are caught in a spot here. I want to be really, really clear. I don't know how many times we have had this discussion about when a kid is in a classroom and they are physically attacking other students. I am not a believer that any kind of IEP protection allows a parent to keep sending that kid to that school every day and knowing that they're going to attack another kid, another teacher, and we're just simply making X's on the abacus until we have the requisite 10 to suspend the students while the other kids are losing educational minutes, not feeling safe. Who can learn while they're looking over their shoulder and everything is disrupted? So what ends up happening, the failure is some of the parents who just have to be on the campus every day. I guess PTO is like a full-time job, whatever it is. There's a certain number of parents who will pressure administrators to what is in essence, whether they know it or not, release information about the student, talk about their case. So for example, if George comes to me and says, I got this kid and they are just this and this, and I say, well, guess what? You can't do this because of this rule, and we're waiting for this. So he goes back and wants to be responsive to the parents who he may feel are being victimized by the situation. I think that's a normal human response. But saying the wrong thing, suddenly you've got somebody suing you because my child is protected by this. I really am at a loss as to how many times someone has to tell the administrators of school, you have to have a determination hearing before you can suspend somebody. I don't care if the newspaper reporter or the mayor of Acton or me, the board member, goes, hey, that kid shouldn't be here. I represent the public and whatever. That has been historically a problem, and it puts staff in a very uncomfortable position. So if anything, I think the board policy needs to work on if there is a physical attack. I don't put the kid back in the classroom the next day. I think that Dr. Chamberlain's group in providing a solution for kids who can't be in the seat every day for one reason or another. I hope that's more than just to check the box. It's helping parents find an alternative and encouraging responsibility and attendance. I hope it hedges the loss of continuum in education. But I think there's room in there to just say on behalf of everyone, I think it's better that we let the situation calm down and offer some type of learning opportunity while we get the next 2 days worked through or whatever it is. I don't know the answer. If I went home and I had a call from the principal used to drag me out of the classroom by the hair. There was some real social, economic learning or whatever you want to call, put label on it. And it was called me missing hair out of my head. Well, they lost at 65, but in any event, the other kids suffered from it. The teacher suffered from it. And I just have to say to the administrators, I feel for you being in a position where you've got the parents are in denial, you've got another people that are telling you and demanding you, and then they call it the worst thing in the world is they call up a board member, the board member starts calling, and the superintendent's getting pressure and everybody's getting pressure. And then of course, some people, I guess, could use an IEP to justify behaviors. Some IEPs may say something like the child gets a break or we get fidget spinners or whatever it is. But when you start getting in junior high, kids have IEPs and the parents aren't smart enough to figure out by asking for these accommodations, you are actually calling additional attention to your child, creating an opportunity for unwanted attention. And even I can walk out of the class. So if I'm having a rough time in the class, I can just go walk around out there and and disappear. And those situations, and I can speak to this, and I don't care who likes it and who doesn't. My child, I think, was one of the, probably the least cognitive and least capable people that ever attended this district. The other one's gonna, as a doctor, jury, whatever, JD, whatever you call it, in May. And so I had the wide gamut of people coming out of my family that could go into a situation, and I'm at a loss on what to do to get people to understand that there is a rule. We don't discuss the rule. We don't feel like, oh, I can't tell you, but we also don't put the teacher and the site administrator in a position where it's just like, there's nothing I can do. The district office is holding my arms, and your kid just gonna have to get beat up, and there's nothing I can do about it. I think that this needs some serious work when it comes to what is the protocol for, number one, assuring the safety of the entire class reasonably. What can the district do? So if there's anything like that, I would like to see it. If we need to have the lawyer in here and have a robust discussion, which I put out some of my theoreticals, great. I hate to spend the money, but I don't know how many times, every time we turn around, it's, I didn't know the rules. And I would expect when the superintendent comes in and has discussions with people about policies they don't understand, I don't expect everybody in the district to understand policies. And I don't expect that everyone would have his level. But I have yet to meet employees that I have problems with and how they serviced my children from start to finish. But at the same time, when the superintendent comes in and tries to explain policy and how that's supported, I don't need disruptions and all this, whatever's going on in the background half the time. I like this district enough to send my kids here. And I hope everybody understands that another 60 families made the choice that we're the right place, and we are going up, and but we gotta have safety in the classroom.
I think part of that is addressed a little bit in the emergency interventions. There is no change as far as what you can and cannot do. It's just clarifying that you have to be sure that you document it, that it does say that you can only use those emergency services as long as it takes to contain the situation, not beyond, because you still have to take into consideration, the safety of everyone and the dignity of the child who is having these issues, is having these behaviors. So it's not saying, okay, there is an issue with one child who has behaviors, we have to do the manifestation. Meanwhile, no, because we still have to protect, as you say, the rest of the class. And we have to then look at that one child who is struggling and say, okay, we have put this, and this into place. It's not helping because we're still having these concerns. The child is still having these triggers, that's still having these behaviors. So what do we need to do to adjust to, work with this child? And that's where our BCBA comes in, because she's very good at being able to observe and noticing sometimes triggers that are missed by the adult in the classroom because they're looking at the whole class.
Yeah, they're looking at the needs and pacing.
Right,
all that.
where
We get that.
BCBA is now focusing in that classroom on the one student to say, oh, that was a trigger. So there are things that continue to be done. It's not just, well, no, we have to, continue to work with that student, continue to adjust the bit to be able to find out how are we going to support this child and still keep the rest of the class where they can continue to learn and be safe.
What is the notification process if one of these triggers comes into place where I have to physically put Ken Fallsgraf in the closet with the giant violin and then I played it and they threw me out for that? I mean, true story, by the way. So,
Parents need to be notified.
Yes.
but
And there's a
what's the
recommendation.
policy about that?
Well, it's notification to the parent, guardian, or ed rights holder.
But I mean, what is the, when, how? I just put your kid in the chair with 4 adults. When do we notify the parent that happened?
Well, once the situation is safe student is de-escalated, contact is made, and, there's. On different levels, there are teams at each and every school site, some more robust than others in terms of the number of individuals on, let's say, an assessment team. And they'll designate, okay, well, you handle this situation as far as de-escalating behavior, you supervise a student, you make contact with a parent, and then we'll all kind of follow up together. So it's.
But I mean, if my kid is in a classroom, flipping a desk over and physically attacking other children, when will I know that? As the parent?
Well, once the situation is contained, the students' safety is number one priority.
But what I'm asking is very simple, like with a clock and
Like within an hour, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's
More, hopefully it's
you
gonna
know,
depend on the
yes.
situation.
so this is a two-people meeting, okay? So we'll call for public comment at the end.
Yeah, as soon as possible, as soon as, the situation.
So we
is
wouldn't
contained.
say like last week, your child did this
Oh,
and then
no,
2 days later, so we're building up the case, so finally we can slam the door.
No, absolutely not. No,
Right.
communication has to happen on the same day. Could it happen within an hour? Of course, it could happen within an hour, 30 minutes. We share with our administrator that the call has to go out immediately. And I say immediately, it has to be very time sensitive.
Is that anywhere in the policy?
You can go back and look.
What, so we make the phone call.
Mhm.
What kind of supports do we have in place? If, say, for example, single parent is at a job, parent can't leave the job. Or parent wants to come down. Is there any support that we offer through all this? If we haven't figured out, the funding is going out the window. There's gonna be a flood of therapists on the market. It's easy to see that. So in the big picture, since I'll say it, the district has now suddenly become quasi-parent for children who don't come to school prepared to learn. In some cases, not everyone has a disability that says I can just go in and punk the teacher because I'm 12 years old now. So is there anything that the parent has that protects their dignity? These meetings that we have where it's like suicide prevention. We're having a meeting about that today, and everybody drives up and goes, hey, I'm here for suicide prevention, and the people in the office, yeah. Really? Do we have an ability for people to seek help in a way that protects the dignity of people?
Yes. So I'm just speaking in kind of general and broad terms, whether they're students with disabilities or our general education population. There are processes that are in place. Kind of going back to your first comment, then I'll talk about the protection of, let's say, confidentiality, dignity of a parent or a rights holder. We're talking about threat assessment teams, we have risk assessment teams. They just had a meeting today, this morning at 9 AM to 10 o'clock. Social workers, counselors, administrators, each and every school site has a threat assessment, risk assessment team. Identifying triggers, who takes on what role, who's the caretaker, who's the supervisor, who's the one who contacts the parent. In a timely manner. And then putting a plan in place to help support not only the student, of course, in question, but to help and bring in the parent to be part of the solution and support. So we have those for each and every site, and those are ongoing meetings. And moving forward in terms of the support for parents, some parent education, being a partner in the process. Anytime that there is where we're talking about, let's say, special education students with a disability through the IEP process, there's a discussion of, okay, well, if these are escalating, this is an incident that took place, parent, you've been, notified about this, we have information. And so through that process, there's the BIP, which is the behavior intervention plan that could be suggested in terms of, okay, what might be the triggers, what are they receptive to in terms of reinforcements and so forth, so on. So that's all done in a very professional and very respectful manner. And then, and that becomes more of a, let's say, a tier 3, that's through an IP process. Tier ones, you mentioned the suicide prevention, parent education workshop, that was actually put out to, all of our parents in the district. That's more of a tier one for our parents to participate, how to, identify, some symptoms, who to refer to, who to seek out. So between the tier ones and tier twos and tier threes, we have developed processes that are in place. One, for all students, and then going to students with disabilities, and then even for all students. We're hopeful that, our supports through our social worker team, We Care Aid USC, will continue as they're part of the threat assessment teams. So everybody has their specific roles in making sure that all students are safe and parents are involved.
So what I would like, we don't need a policy for everything, but I would like everybody to understand that if these behaviors are happening in classroom, they don't just go away. They tend to keep going on. The physical stuff goes on. And if the parent is not able to engage, we need to figure out why. And at some point, we got to be able to say, hey, look, this is not working for everybody, much less your student. I know that needs to be highly documented or whatever, but as you're looking at these policies, I think that responsibility to education rights holders is a big part of this, and I don't know that that's, Ron will know what he can do with that. So I've said a lot.
I want to answer your question. So the policy says that the guardian parent ed rights holder needs to be notified within one school day. And that is whenever an emergency intervention is used or serious property damage has occurred. It also goes on to state that if this happens, there needs to be scheduled within 2 days an IEP team meeting to review the emergency report and determine the necessary steps to adjust the BIP to be able to address the needs of the child.
Thank you for reading that into the record. I think based on the volume of what has been said, there's probably public comment. I think we have some in the room.
Yes.
Sorry,
No comment? Okay.
Okay. Any questions or anything on disclosure of confidential information?
No.
Additional? Okay. So the next one is athletic competition. And this one actually is a lot longer than it used to be. It addresses the fact that the students, the athletes need to be supervised by qualified coaches. They need to be sure that they receive appropriate instruction and guidance related to safety, health, sports skill, and sportsmanship. It discusses derogatory Native American terms, that there cannot be any teams that use any kind of term that has to do with Native Americans. That need to be sure that the superintendent or designee shall ensure that equivalent athletic opportunities are provided to males and females, and that students are permitted to participate in athletic activities consistent with their gender identity. As far as eligibility, it specifically says that students cannot be kept out of sports due to, they cannot be charged a fee. They cannot be a fee to cover for uniforms, equipment, nothing like that. So they cannot be charged at all. As far as health and safety, all the equipment needs to be cleaned and inspected for safety before the beginning of each school year. And the superintendent or designee, and this is new, shall develop a written emergency action plan that describes the location of emergency medical equipment, including automated external defibrillators and procedures to follow in the event of a sudden cardiac arrest or other medical emergency related to the athletic programs, activities, or events. The plan shall include a description of the manner and frequency at which the procedures to be followed in the event of medical emergencies will be rehearsed based on coaches' training requirements specified in Ed Code 31579.1. So then I went and looked at, what is this Ed Code? Because it's like, it says to refer to this, but if we don't know. So this, the Ed Code 35179.1 mandates that all high school sport coaches, paid or volunteer, complete a state-approved coaching education program that includes training in sports, psychology, pedagogy, physiology, management, regulation, and CPR/first aid with a focus on concussions, heat illness, and cardiac arrest. It also goes on to describe what to do in case of a serious injury. So those are the changes from what we had before. Any questions or comments?
Let the record show I had no comment or discussion on this item. Policy 6145.2 athletic competition.
Mr. Roderick, because earlier on, in addressing 6145.2, you mentioned qualified coaches and criteria. And then you linked it to some of the professional development and training. So I put a question down in terms of, well, what is that?
That's what I was gonna.
That's something that I'm going to
How do you
reach out
qualify?
to some other districts to find out. Because, well, I need to reach out to our athletic director and say, what kind of training is provided? Because this is new to us, this is new policy, so we need to be sure that we're following it, especially once we adopt it.
Correct.
So we need to be sure that there is some training, probably gonna have to go on Google, because it says it has to be state approved training.
Mhm.
So we need to be sure that we are providing that to the coaches before they start working with our student athletes.
The approved list of trainings and.
Correct.
Okay, we'll follow up on that, but I just wanted to, for the record, clarify, well, what is the qualified coaching criteria and signify, but thank you for explaining.
Okay, so the next one is policy 61428, which is comprehensive health education. Again, this was last updated by our local school board 2005, and there's a new it's been updated by CSBA just in August of this year. So it wants to be sure that you have goals for the district's health education plans, and they shall be designed to promote student wellness and shall include, but not limited to, goals for nutrition, promotion, and education, physical activity, and other district-based activities to promote student well-being. Any health education offered to middle or high school shall include instruction in mental health. The superintendent or designee shall provide professional development as needed to ensure that the health education teachers are knowledgeable about academic content standards, that state curriculum framework and effective instructional methodologies. Superintendent or designee shall provide periodic reports to the board regarding the implementation and effectiveness of the district's health education program. And it stresses also that the parents or guardians have to be notified that they have the right to opt out. And if they opt out, it has to be in writing, provided to the school in writing. And if they opt out, the students are excused and they need to be given an alternative educational activity. There's not to be any kind of punitive for being opted out. It just has to be given a different opportunity just to do something else during that time. Any questions?
Okay, so I have a question. I'll choose to participate in this one. Is there a mandated curriculum that is ordered by the state or the county or both? Or do we maintain local control over the curriculum that's used to deliver the health?
It specifically says in here, state curriculum framework. So there is a state curriculum framework that we need to be following.
Okay, so let me put it this way. There are several different types of curriculum providers, Benchmark. Who else? Throw me a couple more so it doesn't look like I'm selling Benchmark.
Renaissance.
TCI,
Yeah.
So there are a number of,
There's a variety
yes.
that fit the criteria.
so the key to my question was local control. Okay. So I want to maintain local control. And all curriculum comes through for board approval, curriculum changes. So that means the books and they're on display. And I've said this before and people look at me like I'm stupid and drunk and maybe you'll do the same this evening. But when I ask the question of staff, am I going to have to get an attorney to determine that my child is identifying as a kitten? Everyone laughs, which I find amusing. But I want to make sure that this policy does not usurp board control to be able to say this curriculum, this program, this everything robs us of our ability to have us as elected officials who actually had our name in a ballot box and people picking us, representing this community in a way that they would feel that we're doing a good job and not introducing. I'll stop there. I think everybody gets the hint here. There, I'm not sure there is a comment necessary. I just made it.
Any other comments?
Is there public comment on this?
No, I don't know.
So then we have, that goes with this policy, the regulation. The regulation goes into specifically what content areas should be covered. So it talks about human growth, development and sexual health, injury prevention and safety, social health. Some of the items that were removed was the use of healthcare services and products, legal and financial aspects and responsibility of marriage and parenthood, diseases and disorders. So those were taken out of the policy. They had been there before. And then it specifically says within each content area, instruction shall be designed to assist students in developing an understanding of essential concepts related to enhancing health, the ability to analyze internal and external influences that affect health, the ability to assess and analyze health information, products, and services, the ability to use interpersonal communication skills, decision-making skills, and goal-setting skills to enhance health, the ability to practice behaviors that reduce risk and promote health, and the ability to promote and support personal, family, and community health. Then it goes into specifically high school education. It says of the course in health is required to graduate from high school. The district's high school health education course shall include instruction in sexual harassment and violence, including and not limited to affirmative consent standard and as defined by, and it gives an ed code 5122536. So I looked it up and it says that, basically it said that if you require health to be able to graduate, it must include instruction on sexual harassment and violence. It needs to also include information on how to report incidents and potential resources for the victims.
Do we require that? Does it know?
Is it a required course, Dr. Sahakian, to be able to graduate?
Health is still a requirement. Yeah.
So we need to be sure that once we adopt the policy that we are covering this. It talks about CPR. And starting with the 26-27 school year, the dangers associated with fentanyl use has to be also taught at high school level. And again, the opting out, parents, guardians have to be notified that they have the right to be able to opt their students out.
And that's at the beginning of the school year? Is that through like a letter or a form?
It has to be written. Yes.
That could be, as part of a, registration packet, beginning of the school. Yeah, absolutely.
And will all these courses be listed on that form, like they know what they're opting out in? Is it everything included, or is it like you pick whichever topic they want? Let's say they don't want to talk about human growth, developing sexual health, but they want the alcohol and tobacco, they want the injury prevention. Is it like they can choose which ones they want to opt out on that form?
It didn't say. It just says that they have the right to opt out. It didn't say if you can pick and choose what you're opting out of. So I guess that would be a decision.
Because a lot of those things are good topics, but I can see some parents saying, okay, I don't want human growth, development, and sexual health, but I want the alcohol, tobacco.
The AR actually gives specifics, in terms of the copy on page 2. Dr. Jesus, parent guardian notification to opt out. May opt out of participating in the following. There's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Is there any way we can look at that form just to kind of The form that you're gonna give out to the parents, will
Do we-
it-
Now,
I have to double check, I don't want to
I'll check
misspeak.
with Dr. Smith.
Right,
You could double check.
then the form will reflect this. I just want the parents to know everything that they're opting out in, and then, you know.
I'm just wondering, two things, I'm just wondering if this is not the form.
Well,
Will you
we would
make
have to
this
cite,
available?
yes, we have to cite the administrative regulations, and we could have this as an attachment.
But what I'm saying is, this is very clear
It is.
about what we're being mandated. And then, when it comes time to discuss this in open session, I'm gonna remind, everyone that this is not a carte blanche life experience. I feel like, it's necessary for me to tell you what happened when I was in the oil field in Texas when I was 21 years old. Or what my personal opinion is about this or that. I would remind everyone that you would not have a conversation either to a group of students, one student, that you would not have in your own work environment without being in HR, with a parent, with the entire board and a presentation. There needs to be some understanding of, yeah, this is not shock value, scared straight, share your personal experiences. And so I think that this form providing the parents' rights is a good thing.
So, Mr. Erdrich, if we could even just take it verbatim, right, on
Right.
page 2, starting section parent guardian notification opt-out, referencing AR 6142.8.
You can put that on the
And-
form.
And then have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the paragraph that starts with the district shall not administer a administrative questionnaire that falls
Right.
along. Yeah.
Okay. So I will check with Dr. Smith and see currently what is being done.
We could assess what's there.
Right.
The updating that's approved and.
We could add that
Sure.
section.
Thank you.
I think all the rest of these are related to sex. At least the numbers, I've seen sex in almost all of them. But I don't see. Like the mental health component or other, the alcohol, tobacco. Infant prevention. So. You get what I'm saying. I know as a parent, I would like most of these except a few, I'll deal with a few topics myself, but some other stuff are great,
I think on all this stuff, I think if you have students that are in the classroom that are respectful. That know the time and place to talk to an adult about something that is, personal. I don't think that those students or any student should be a captive audience to somebody with an agenda on something that involves their personal experience or feelings about something that's highly personal. That's about as politically correct as I can be about that.
So those are the policies that we have. I will check about the safety for children when the aggressor is student in the IEP, be sure about that. And check with Dr. Smith again about the form to be sure that we include that section. Is there anything else that would like me to follow up on?
We'll have that other policy, right, the communication one. Is there after that one?
Yes, so it'll be a first read. Next time.
Sure, that's
Next board.
November 13th.
Thanks. Any future agenda items you'd like for me to bring
I have
from
none.
policy or management?
I'm kind of liking the way that the staff is running this and I have never been one to want to interfere much with what staff is doing. Because when you start doing that, and then they're trying to figure out, what my flavor of the month is, and we kind of lose track of the bigger area of responsibility.
Thank you, sir.
That being said, anybody have anything else? Any comments?
I will say that I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but regarding the health class textbooks at Vasquez, they are extremely outdated. Like They could be from the nineties, definitely early 2000s, so you guys might want to look into that. It's
So-
really old,
It is,
So-
it is an older adoption. You are-
Just,
very old.
I'll address that, just so we know, this is, the reason we don't have three of us discussing policies is because now all of a sudden we have a quorum, you have the right to vote, so you get that. I'm gonna be really honest with you,
Mhm.
you're a public speaker now, I'm the board member with the most experience. One way of addressing policies is not to. So if I've got a textbook from, 1910. And it doesn't have all this stuff into it, I might think that that's a good thing, that way I don't have to deal with reality. There, I told you, right? Without getting into like a lot of detail, if you could take a look at your book, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, you can just say,
Yeah.
but is there stuff in there where you just look at it and go, there's nothing about something significantly like for broader health?
There's nothing about vaping, fentanyl, opioids. The relevant drugs that my generation's taking is not in there because it's a textbook of the past generation.
So, believe this or not, but when I was your age, if my parents didn't think I was doing it, I wasn't.
Back then, yeah.
Yeah, back then. Well, so what you're telling me is that doesn't work really well anymore.
Well,
About
there are
it.
parents that suspect their kids of doing things and their kids aren't, and there are parents who don't suspect their kids of anything and their kids are.
That has been age, that's what caused me to start listening to Kiss in 1976, right there, yeah.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
appreciate that, we're on to that. With
So-
that being said, what,
If you're called upon, when we open this up for discussion. And we ask for your opinion. Now all of a sudden we're out there and your opinion is what it is as a student board member.
So would you like me to mention it or no?
Well, kind of just see what's going on and make sure that I'm not gonna give you direction. I can kind of keep you out of trouble, even though I can't keep myself out of trouble. But looking at your last report, you mentioned some things that were very like about metalwork, things that meant something to the kids, what they thought and what they were doing. And I really like that. So sometimes if it's a discussion where we're hitting the meat and potatoes of the health thing, and you were to say in the meeting, I've looked at the book and there are some just broadly general topics that I think are missing, and some of the stuff may not have existed in the current
I
form.
mean, even their statistics about tobacco and cigarette use is not correct for now, yeah. Cause it's so old, it's different information. You have different studies now.
Yeah.
With different results.
So I think if you can capture that broadly. And when we're considering an adoption of curriculum, if you read between the lines, you heard what I don't want in the books. And I don't need teachers and people crossing lines that might affect what your lifetime of commitment in your family means. And I don't want to use the words, but there are some families that are like, and there are some things that are highly valued.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
so, but at the same time,
But what stuck out to me as a freshman was how the stuff about drugs, the stuff we're being taught in high desert. We were having assemblies about not to vape, and then you go through the entire book and there's no such thing in the textbook, and you had to do separate curriculum.
they still taught you about it, right? Just in a different.
Yes, but yeah, I mean,
Okay.
but it was, yeah, it was different.
is what you're saying, let me try and get this around my old man head. When I was in school, you sat there and you shut up and you are gonna be a factory worker. Because the other kids are gonna be there, there's not that many kids going to college and you're not one of them. So we need to make sure that you know how to read, write, and follow directions and put your hairnet on or your hard hat. And make widgets to the point where the company can make money.
Yeah,
That was the model of education.
yeah,
Okay, but now I think what I'm hearing you saying is if you're gonna open up a discussion to make information that the critical mind can look at and say, I'm not just doing this because somebody in authority. I just didn't even really realize that, and now I can go to my own resources and say, I see, this is what makes sense to me, not just an adult telling me it's okay. Or not okay.
Yes and no. Well, regarding this education, this health education, a large part of it was drugs because that's the biggest issue in our in my age group society. Because yes, everyone knows like wash your hands, eat healthy, go to sleep on time. But regarding the facts on drugs and actually how drugs work is more important because I think it's more of an issue. And that was the stuff that wasn't as current. That's why I think.
So I think basically what I'm hearing is. And this has always been an issue, it was just different when I was a kid, the emphasis was different, cause like. If you can wash your hands, that's what daddy feels comfortable talking to you about. And if you don't feel comfortable talking about it in the right atmosphere, then you can't expect the big atmosphere to make you educated enough about it, okay?
Okay, let's adjourn the meeting to 5:59.